Over the last several weeks, we've been talking about parables. And what we know that parables are stories that Jesus told to the people that he walked with. And a lot of times the stories were actual things that people could identify with. And so this week we get to another parable. And I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but over this week, I had to go fill up my gas tank. My truck was, I don't know about you, but how many guys fill up your tank when like you're on like a quarter of a tank? Like, how many guys are good like that? Like quarter of a tank, you're like, okay, fill up. No, I wait until like my light comes on and it says ding, like low fuel. But I don't get it then. I know I have a good 50 miles till I really have to get it. And so then what I do is when my wife gets in the car and then she notices the fact that I need gas. She's like, hey, you need gas. I'm like, no, I got 25 miles, babe. Don't worry. I said, and then the famous words that I always say are this: just trust me. Which would be good words to use if she could actually trust me. But there's been a couple of times where we've run out of gas, like on the highway. And when I said, trust me, we got enough gas. And I've kind of misjudged a couple of times, like 3 or 4 times. But I've never learned that lesson. And so this week, when my gas tank was screaming at me, I had to go to the Shell station and I had to fill up. And about $60 later, I get into the gas station, and you know what the crazy thing that they asked me to do? They said, that is $60. I said, what do you think this place is? I was so mad. I paid them, but I'm not going back to that Shell station no more. They want me to pay for my gas. That's ridiculous. Then I went to McDonald's. Because I had to go do a coaching thing at the soccer fields, and so I had to go quick. And so I ordered my normal meal, which is really not the healthiest meal ever, but I just ordered it because I panic. I don't know, you guys panic when you get into it? You want to do something different? I just panic and go to what I know. And the lady, so I pull around, and the lady, she said, sir, that will be $5.81. I was like, what? I don't even get my food yet. You just bombard me with like paying for something. And so I'm not going to that McDonald's anymore because they want to make me pay for my burger and fries and large Coke and stuff like that. But then here's what really got me. So this week we're at my daughter's dance recital, and I walked in. I went to go inside, and they say, sir, where are your tickets? I said, I don't have tickets. They said, you got to go over there and you got to pay for tickets. I said, I got to pay to watch my daughter dance? They said, yes, $5 a ticket. If I'd known that, I'd just left the other kids at home. I'd have just said, hey, I'd have been the only one, but I had to pay $20 to watch my daughter dance. And then every time I go to the dance studio, they want more money. They want money for the monthly fees. They want money for the costumes. They want money. And I'm done with this. We're not going to that McDonald's. We're not going to that gas station anymore, and we got to find another dance place because I'm not paying for the money anymore because all they want is my money. Some of you guys are here, you're probably thinking, Greg, that's pretty ridiculous because that happens to me too. You know, when we apply it to like restaurants, we apply it to gas stations or even dance studios, we don't have that attitude, right? Because it's expected. We would never expect to eat at a restaurant or fill up our truck or pick things up online or go to a dance studio without an issue of money. But when it comes to the church, we tend to have a different point of view. Too many people have a different mindset of what money and I guess belonging to a church or being at a church have. You might say, I've committed my life to Jesus. I don't swear, steal, or cheat on my spouse, but leave my money out of it. You can't talk about anything else, but you better not talk about the money. I don't care what you talk about. Just leave money out of it. See, here's the interesting disconnect some people have between faith and also between their finances. Here's the thought, that you go to church, you might even love God, but you're not sure how I'm going to let that affect what I do with my money. See, that way of thinking, that's why, here's the interesting fact. Jesus taught much about giving and stewardship. In fact, 15% of Jesus' teaching was actually on the subject of money and even our possessions. He talked more about money in his teachings than he actually did on heaven and hell combined. I know some of you guys are probably shocked in that. You're like, oh my word. Jesus spent a lot of time on the subject because he knew with the whole area of money and the whole area of finances that it was a difficult area, even in Jesus' time. You see, they know what the Bible says. We know what the Bible says in this area, but a lot of times, many Christians, what we do is we think that obedience in this area is actually optional. We think, I'm doing good over here, but this is not talking about me. It's optional. But we can unintentionally disobey the Word of God without any repercussions. You might think, this is what I need. So, I talk about a lot of things in the church, but nothing gets people's attention. That's why I didn't send you an email what we're talking about, because I was afraid if I said, hey, we're talking about money, I'd have like 2 people here, and that'd be like my family. That's why I didn't send you an email of what we're talking about, because I wanted all you guys to come. So I was kind of like baiting you. I guess now you know if I don't send you something, like you know what we're talking about. So I guess the gimmick's up for Greg. But people are really sensitive about money when it comes to the church. And there's a lot of confusion surrounding the whole issue of giving. And there's confusion, this stems from the average person. They assume that I'm doing this because I want like a pay raise. Like people, like I get around a bunch of people and then we figure out what my salary will be based on how much people are giving. But let me just settle you down a little bit, okay? How much anything happens, no matter what happens in the offering, my salary stays the same, okay? You're not going to see me next week if the offering's good driving a new BMW, okay? I know some of you guys are like, man, what kind of truck is Pastor driving these days? It's the one by the trash can. That's the one. If you want to know what car I drive, just look the closest one to the trash can. No, it's not the sports car that's in the other parking lot. That's not mine. Okay, I just drive a truck, just to let you know. So here's what I want you to know is that nothing happens based on our offerings. Nothing happens for me good. So I want you just to know that my paycheck is the same regardless of what is in the offering bag. And you won't see me with like now these alligator skin shoes because number one, my wife won't let me get them. Number two, I'm just a cheapskate and I don't want to pay the money. I guess I'd have like fake stuff like that. But here's the deal. Here's what I want. I want us to understand what happens when we're obedient to God. Because my life is where it is because of my parents' obedience to God. And because of the legacy that they started. And a lot of it wasn't giving. And so Matthew chapter 25, we're going to look at another parable. It's a parable that Jesus told to illustrate a truth. The parable can apply to many measures of our life. In like how you share your faith, how you see your abilities, and what you do with your money. Matthew 25:14 is this. Again, it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his property to them. The parable was based on a familiar custom in Jesus' day. Local leaders of the Roman Empire, often they journeyed to Rome and to lobby for continued power, or when an emperor took control. While they're away, what they did was they entrusted their responsibilities to the subordinates that worked for them. This guy gathered his workers and said, guys, I'm going on a long journey. I'm going to leave you in charge of the business and my money. How scary would that be, right? If that was you. You left everything that you had to a couple of people. How many guys would be a little scared in that, right? But you got to make sure you have good people around you. So notice the Bible says this, he entrusted his property to them. They had a temporary management of it, but it was still his money. They didn't own it. It wasn't theirs, but they were given the responsibility and the authority to do something with what they have been given. So in that day, these servants, they were called stewards. Stewards were ones who acted on the behalf of the owner. The first steward principle that we can learn from this story is this: you don't own anything. God owns it all. Everything that we have in life, we don't own it, but God owns everything. I love when Christmas time comes at my house, my kids, they get gifts and all that stuff, but I like to tell them the reason why they're getting these gifts because I love them. And at any time, I can take back the gift, like the PS4, and play it as much as I want, because technically it still belongs to me, right? You ground your kids from your things, and it still belongs to you. And so I remember I would often say, I'd get mad at my parents, and kids, you probably said this, you'd say, I'm running away from home. And so my dad would famously say, I will pack you up in what you came in. Yeah. Now, that's some good parenting right there, because what you do is you go, okay, Dad, what did I come in? And he's like, all this is mine. This all belongs to me. So I quickly realized what you come in is not a lot. And so how do you fill up a bag that really doesn't belong to you, because now it belongs to your parents and different stuff like that? So then I quickly realized, my being at the house of my parents, that's probably a whole lot better than walking the streets with what I came in. So what we got to know is that we don't own anything. God owns it all. See, God owns everything. Everything I have comes from Him. God just asks me to manage it. He owns it. He manages it. And we see it's not my money, but it's His money. It's not my stuff, but it's His stuff. And everything I have because He's entrusted me to have it. Verse 15 says this, to one He gave 5 talents of money, to another He gave 2 talents, and to another 1 talent, each according to his ability. Then he went on his journey. See, the stewards were given some money. One was given 5 talents, another was 2, and then the last guy was given 1. A talent was a unit of silver. In Jesus' day, that unit of silver would have been worth about 2.5 years of wages for the average worker. So let's just say it was about $50,000. 1 talent was worth $50,000. One guy was given $50,000, another guy $100,000, and then one guy got $250,000 to kind of hold on and to operate the way the owner would operate. See, these guys were given a pretty good chunk of money to oversee. There's something I don't like about this story. I don't know about you, but why it's really not fair. It doesn't sound fair. Why give 5? Why give 2? Why give 1? Why not just give them all the same? Like, I would give them all. I like fair. I like things to be somewhat fair, and so I would probably give them all the same. I don't know why. One guy got 5 talents. What's so special about him that is not in the other 2? Why doesn't everyone just get equal amounts? That's kind of that's my question. But here's what I hear all too often is this. Why are some people blessed more than others? Why do they have so much more than what I have? I don't understand why God gives us different amounts. I guess when you get to heaven one day you can ask Him. But I have to understand that His way is right, that God has the right to distribute to each of us whatever He wishes. It all belongs to Him. So when it comes to our money, we don't have any rights in it. We are stewards. We have responsibilities. The owner has rights. The steward has responsibilities. You are tasked with the responsibility of managing the money that God trusts you with. Verse 16 says this, the man who received the 5 talents went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 more. So also the one who had 2 talents gained 2 more. See, these guys were given stewardship responsibility to act on behalf of the owner while he was away. See, there was no doubt that they knew the priorities of the owner. They knew what the owner would want them to do. They were to manage his money the way he would manage his money, or the way he thought they would manage his money. If I was an investor, we'll just say this. If I said I was a financial investor and you gave me $100 to invest, okay? Let's just pretend like I'm not an investor. I'm just a pastor and know nothing about investing. But just say I was an investor and you gave me $100 to invest and to not just take your money from 100 to 0, but 100 and kind of double it and all that. So who am I responsible to? So if Sean gives me $100 to invest into the market because I know what I'm talking about, the money that Sean gives me does not become my money, but it's still Sean's money. He has given me an opportunity to steward his money and to help his money grow. And so like any financial investor, what they're doing is they're working on behalf of the person that just gave them the money. So if I want a big house, I want a boat, I want my alligator shoes that are going to cost me a lot of money, what I got to do is I can't take Sean's money and take my priorities and then invest the way I want to do it. So if Sean gives me $100 and says, hey, I want to be conservative, it's not my money, it's Sean's money. So I have to be conservative with his money. I have to manage his money the way he would want me to manage my money. That's why I have a retirement account, and I've told the person that's over my retirement account, this is how I want it to be invested in, so they can't just go whatever they want to do. And so what we got to do is the job of a steward is to adopt the priorities of the owner. I have to adopt Sean's priorities. His priorities matter the most. Stewardship is also using God-given resources to accomplish God-given goals. If everything you have belongs to God, if He has trusted you with it, whose goals should you be working towards? Yours or God's? That's right. As a steward, you are responsible to use what God has given to you to accomplish the God-given goals. So you've heard me say it many times, His kingdom first. Jesus said, seek ye first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. All these things, that's everything that you'll ever need. If you put God's kingdom first, if you use your God-given resources to accomplish His priorities, His goals, then God promises to supply all of your needs. Now, you understand the verse in Malachi. We've talked about it at the beginning of the year. It talks about robbing God when you don't pay your tithe. It's robbing God because we're not using His resources to accomplish His goals. Verse 18 says, but the man who had received the 1 talent went off. He dug a hole in the ground, and he hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled the accounts with him. The owner came back to see how they were doing with his money, and apparently he didn't email them, he didn't text them, he didn't even call them to say, this is what I want you to do. He just gave them those resources, and then they went off. He didn't tell them how he wanted them to manage it. Then the owner came back to see what they did. One day, you will stand before God, and you'll be accountable for how you handled what He trusted you with. One day, we'll all be accountable for that. Did you use His resources to accomplish His goals? Or did you apply your own priorities and ignore His priorities? I understand this is not popular, and we understand that we will be held accountable for our words, but we need to realize that we'll also be accountable for our actions. But you might say, but Greg, come on, our money and our stuff, you're accountable to God for everything, even your money. You can't separate this one part of your life from the rest. And as a steward, you are accountable to the owner. In verse 20, it says this, the man who had received the 5 talents brought the other 5. He said, Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 talents. See, I have gained 5 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things, and now I'm going to put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. So he did a good job. The owner said, good job. I love it when people tell me good job, because then that means that I did you're a little slow on this one. I thought you guys went, all right, good job, some of you guys. All right, later someone could look at the 5-talent steward and say, what's so special about him? Why does he have so much? Why is he so blessed? Because he was faithful with the little things. And I think a lot of times we look at the faithfulness of people, and then we ask, why are they getting that and I don't get that? What we forget to ask ourselves is, were they faithful with the little things? He was smart, but that's not why he was blessed. He was blessed according to his faithfulness. Why do they have such a big house? Why do they have a boat? Why do they have a house that sits on the lake? You make a huge mistake when you resent someone for their blessings without really knowing their faithfulness. Verse 22 says this, the man with the 2 talents also came. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 2 talents. See, I have gained 2 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with the few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. So once again, he did a good job. The guy who started with 2 talents was blessed in the same way that the guy who had 5 talents. See, they didn't start with the same amount. They didn't end up with the same amount, but they received the same blessing because they were responsible for what they were given. You'll be blessed according to your faithfulness. You might want to, teenagers, you might want to just store that in your mind that you will be blessed according to your faithfulness. So how faithful you are, that's how blessed you will be. See, it's easy to say, well, if I had a lot of money, if I'd be faithful, how about this? Be faithful with what God has given you, where you are at this moment. See, you aren't blessed according to the amount, but according to your faithfulness. How you handle with what you have. The question is not, what would I do if I had a lot? I love it when people tell me, if I had a lot, I would do this. And the answer is, I told someone that. They said, if I had a lot, I would then start tithing. And I told them, no, you won't, because you don't tithe on what you have now. I probably shouldn't say that, but I kind of did. Sorry. I just kind of, sometimes, you get it in your head and it just flows out the mouth. And sometimes it just flowed out on that one. I probably should have been a little bit more gracious, but I wasn't. And the second question is this, what am I doing with what I have right now? What am I doing with what I have right now? I don't know about you, but I daydream about winning the lottery. I don't know about you. I don't play the lottery, but I'm daydreaming that one day I'll win the lottery. I don't know how you can win the lottery if you don't play the lottery, but my grandmother played the lottery and she never won, so I figured my odds aren't very good. I always wonder, I'm like, when will be the day where someone says, I want to bless you in the church and open up a big old duffel bag with $100 bills, and I'll be like, oh my word. I'll be like, how cool would that be the day? Because then my dreams are like, oh, we could do this and that, and we could help people all around the world, and we could help people in Southwest Little Rock, and we could do all this stuff. I love living in the what would happen if this happened. But what sometimes we forget to do is we've got to be faithful with what we have. We can't plan on what we don't have, but we just got to be faithful with what we have. In verse 24, it says this, then the man who had received the 1 talent, he came and he said, Master, he said, I knew that you were a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. Verse 25 says, so I was afraid and went out and hid your talent in the ground. So here is what belongs to you. And he probably had to spit on it and get the, like he had to find it and then get the dirt off because it's probably dirty at this point. And he gave it to him, and his master didn't say, this is what he said in verse 26. His master replied, you wicked, lazy servant. Oh, that wasn't well done. So you knew that I harvest where I've not sown and gather where I've not scattered seed. Well, when you should have put money on deposit with the banker, so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest. Verse 28 says, take the talent from him and give it to the one who has the 10 talents. For everyone who has will be given more, and he will have an abundance. Whoever does not have even what he has will be taken from him. And throw that worthless, he was a worthless servant, not a good servant, but a worthless now, outside into the darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Oh, it seems kind of harsh. He didn't lose it. He just kept the same one. See, remember, if I was telling the story, here's how I would probably tell it if I was Jesus, and we all know I'm not, thank God, right? If I was telling the story, I'd give the one guy one, and then I'd make him the hero. But it seems fair that way, I think. But, it didn't happen that way. But it was the one talent guy who didn't use what he was given. So because he didn't use it, because he ignored the priority of his master, that he lost it. The master took the one talent and then he gave it to the guy with the most. The one talent guy was worthless. He was considered worthless, and he throws him out. That's a pretty tough story. And you might say, why are you telling us this story? But here's what we got to understand about the story. He didn't use what he was given, so it was taken away from him. I know that might not seem fair, but this is the story that Jesus told about what ought to be going on in the lives of those who claim to be followers of Jesus. Everything belongs to God. He has trusted you with some things. You are a steward. You should act on his behalf with his interests to accomplish his goals. You'll be blessed according to our faithfulness. And one day, when our journey is over, you're going to stand before God, and you're going to give an account for what you did with what you had. The story is for me, and it's also for all of us today. The one talent guy, he failed as a steward. I think there are some lessons that we have to learn from this approach. Think about this. The one talent steward says, my idea of being a good steward is to play it safe. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to wait, and hopefully it multiplies under the ground, but maybe it won't. But hopefully I won't be a bad steward of it. Maybe you've said something like that. I'll wait for the right time, for the right opportunity, for the right maybe investment, or maybe you say, I'll wait. I'll wait until I have more. Then I can't do anything with this little right now, but when I get more, then I can make a bigger difference. I'll just do nothing and wait till I have more, then I can give more. Maybe you're here and you'll say, I'll wait until there's no chance for failure, until it's a sure thing. I'll wait until the kids are grown, until my career's on track, or until I get my act together. I'll wait until I am a member. I'll wait. I will see what others do first. I'll wait until I know more. See, the one talent guy, that's what he did. The master showed up, and the servant went back to his backyard to remember where he buried it, because I don't know about you, but my memory's not all that good sometimes, and so when I bury something, I forget where I buried it. And so luckily, he didn't have a neighbor with a little metal detector that found that metal, and so he didn't lose it. But what he did, he had to go back, he had to dig it up with something he did absolutely nothing with. See, you fail as a steward when you do nothing with what God has given you. The one talent guy was called lazy. He lacked ambition. He made no effort. He was content to float through life. The 5 talent and the 2 talent guys, it took a lot of work to double their money. They put a lot of effort in, a lot of work in. It's easier to sit back. And some of us, we got to understand that. It's easy for us just to sit back and let other people do the hard work. Let someone else do it. After all, look around. There are a lot of people here, so we could just kind of bypass what we're really supposed to do and just get in service when it really starts, and then we don't have to do much, and then we can leave, be the first ones to leave. Some of you guys might say, why are we talking about money again? Why do you even need our money? Here's the deal. I want you, here's why we talk about these things. I want you to understand that freedom that God gives all of us. I understand it seems easier not to give. It seems easier not to be a tither. After all, 10% can be a lot. I just can't afford it, or it's too hard. In the short run, it seems easier not to give, not to concern yourself with God's priorities, but you fail as a steward when you decide easier is better. You know better. You wouldn't teach your children that easier is better. I've never met a parent that says this, just get through life. I want you to go to school and don't get A's, don't get B's, just get C's, just barely make it by. And then when you get a job, just get a job that is okay, that's not great, it's just okay, and then just barely get by until one day maybe you can retire, then you can barely just retire on the skin of your teeth. And I've never heard a parent say that. I've never heard people say that, but sometimes we act like that. Here's the deal. It's easier to not study for an exam, but it's much easier to cheat, right? I sit by the person that's smart, and so I'm just going to cheat them. Okay, yeah. It's easier to cheat than to study. It's easier to buy a paper on the internet. Sorry if I just gave you an idea. Than to write one. Oh, man, I wonder, Google, I need a term paper for this. Oh, look. And then you just copy, cut, and paste, and you don't even stick your own name on it. It's like still the same person. You're like, maybe they'll know that it was me. See, it's easier to steal than to get a job. It's easier to sleep than to go to church. It's easier just to sleep than go to school. It's easier not to clean your room. It's easier not to brush your teeth. Because I have to say that to my kids all the time. Did you brush your teeth? Oh, yeah, I forgot. It's easy not to do those things. But in the long run, is easier better? Is easier better? It's not better. See, you don't believe that the one talent guy was so afraid that he went out and he buried the talent when his master showed up, that it's a little dirty. But here it is. I didn't blow it. I didn't lose it. I didn't waste it. In fact, I kept it just the same. I didn't fail. Here, have it back. And the only risk that the guy took was to bury the talent and to remember where he put it. You don't have to worry about failure if you don't put any risks at all. Man, that's pretty good. You might want to, if it's not in your notes, you might just want to write it right there and just circle it. And understand your fear. We all have fears. Maybe your fear is if I give to God, I won't have enough. And that's a real fear. Because I understand what some of us have, and it's not a lot. And you go, but this $10 or this $5 can go a long way in my home. And if I give it to God, that doesn't really make any sense because I'm not helping myself out. If I tithe, how will I pay my bills? If I give money to missions, I'll have less. But just like the one talent servant, we fail as a steward when you give in to fear. See, God has trusted you when it comes to Him. It's your choice, just like the stewards in this story. You can take what God has given you and use it to accomplish His goals, or you can lose it. That's your choice. Here's the funny part of the story. If you don't use what God has given to you to accomplish His goals and His priorities, you have, in the end, you have no choice. You're just going to lose it all the same. One day, your life is going to be over. And everything that you try to get on this earth, you're going to lose it, okay? Last time I checked, I couldn't take a car to heaven, no matter how beautiful it is. You might say, but Greg, doesn't that happen to everyone? Don't I lose everything if I go for His goals? No, that's not the case. Not the faithful steward. Look at what Jesus said in Matthew 6, verse 19. It says, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, but where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moth and rust do not destroy, where thieves do not break in and steal." So you can be a faithful steward and use what God has given to you to store up treasures in heaven. So you won't lose the treasures that last forever. You can use the resources that God has entrusted to you to accomplish His goals. You can be a faithful steward, or you can be like the one talent guy and lose it all. I don't know about you, but there was a time in my life where where when I looked at my paycheck and I calculated the 10%, I looked at it differently. I looked at it like, ooh, look what I could do with that money. And I looked at it as my money, and I worked hard for this. And then when I calculated the 10%, and I was working at Burger King, so I wasn't getting I wasn't making a fortune, but I was making a little bit. And, I was like, oh, but the $20, I could do a lot more. But I had to redirect my thought. And over the course of time, I've struggled with the idea of tithing a little bit because I looked at it as it was mine. And that's what we do. I work hard. I wake up early. I do this. It's mine, 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 mine. But then I started looking at it but God has blessed me with a good job. So if God has blessed me with a good job, then technically, it's really not my job, but it's God's job, and I have to do a good job for God. And because God is allowing me to do a good job, and He's giving me favor in my job, and He's allowing me to make this much money. And if He's allowing me to make this much money so that I can take care of my family, then really what God is just asking me to do is just take just a little percentage out. Just 10%. Just 10% and giving it back to Him. How good is God if He lets us keep the 90%? And so what I had to do is I had to decide how I was going to view the money that I had. Was it my money or was it God's money? And then when I viewed it differently, then everything else became a little bit easier. Now, is it easy when you write out that first check and you're like, I'm going to start tithing, and you look at it and you go, okay. And you start calculating all the things you could do and all the bills that you could pay, and you're like, it's scary. But guess what? When you are obedient to God, that's when other things can start to happen. When we fully trust in God for everything, that's when those doors that seem to be closed for new jobs start to open, because now God's saying, okay, you're going to be faithful. Here's what I want you to do. Here's where I'm going to take you. And so we got to understand, I want you to understand this, is that all that we have is God's. And God could make us give more, but God just says, you know what? So I want us all to view ourselves not as the 1-talent person, but as the 5-talent person, as the 2-talent person that goes out and does good with God's resources. And whether it's, maybe you're here and you go, I don't have a job, so how can I be good with God's resources? God has given us all talents, gifts, and abilities to do something with. And so that's my prayer for us today, is that as we move forward, that we become good stewards of all that belongs to God. And I want to pray that as God changes our mentality for what we think belongs to us. And so with every head bowed, with every eye closed, I just want to pray over you. Dear Heavenly Father, I come to you and I thank you for all that you do. Lord, I thank you that you give us stories in the Bible, Lord, that you've told your disciples, you've told other people, Lord, that we can learn from. Lord, I pray right now as we learned about the story of the person with the talents, God, I pray, Lord, that we be a church that is obedient to you in every area of our life. Lord, help us to be obedient in the area of our money. Help us to be obedient in the area of just our talents, our gifts, and abilities. God, help us not to live in fear of what if, because the what if may never happen. Help us to always want to please you, so that one day when we're held accountable for the words and our actions and how we use the money that you've given us, Lord, we can hear those words, well done, my good and faithful servants, because you've been faithful with the little, I am now going to give you more. And I pray, Lord, for those who have been faithful to you, Lord, and who are in an area of their life where they need you to move them, maybe a change in location, a change in job, God. I pray, Lord, because of their faithfulness, Lord, that you provide those things that they are needing. Maybe another step to where you're taking them, God. I pray, Lord, as a church, Lord, we become solely committed to following you and to being obedient in every area of our life. And when people look at us, it's not, they look at us as obedient followers of Jesus. And I pray as we go out into our community, we go out into our mission field, God, people look at us not as just what we have, but they look at us as people at First Little Rock are different because they're fully obedient to every area of their life with Jesus Christ, God. And I pray, Lord, as we go out, Lord, that people see us in a different light, that people look at us, Lord, as just people wanting everything that you have for us so that we, Lord, are just obedient. Lord, thank you for everyone that is using their resources and doing what you've called them to do. I thank you for those. God, I thank you for their faithfulness. Lord, help us, just like in Galatians chapter 6, verse 9, help us not to ever be tired of doing good, but just to keep on doing well, doing good. Keep the faith, God. And Lord, I pray, Lord, for those who just say, I haven't started to be faithful with what God has called me to do. Lord, help them to have the courage to be more faithful and to actually take a step. Lord, help them just to take that step today, and take that step this week, Lord. Lord, we love you and we thank you for all that you do. In your name I pray. Everyone said, amen. We love you guys, and I'll see you next week as we look at another parable. We love you. Hope you have a good week.